Shalom from Israel. I'm Ariel Ben Abraham. This week we read Parashat Noach, which is the second portion of the Torah. Let's start. It begins saying, these are the offspring of Noah. Noah was a righteous man, perfect in his generation. Noah walked with God. Okay, let's start first with the first phrase, sentence. These are the offspring of Noah. Let's take a little leap in the narration. In other words, we know that there's going to be a flood. All humankind is going to disappear, and then Noah and his children are going to remain. So we're talking about the generations of Noah in this context. So it's like whatever happens later are going to be Noah's generation. We have to understand generations in several ways. Usually it's about time, about the times in which people live. They usually the definition of a generation. Some people divide generation every 20 years, some people 25. So the generation that is living in these 20 or 25 years, that's their generation. So this usually has a quality. So in other words, past generations had their own particular quality. So for example, the generation of the 80s behaved in a particular way. They have some kind of conception of life and social expression in a particular way, in their way, in their generation. That's one way to define generation. In the mystic Hasidic tradition in Judaism, they're talking about reincarnations. This is like on a deeper level. So it's like from generation to generation, it's like when we die, we are born again. So the process of being born again is a new generation. That's another way, but it has to be applied, this concept, in a mystic way. It has to be with life and death. So, but again, that's a definition. So, offspring, usually we're talking about children. The children that we beget, that we have. Again, in the mystic context, the terms what they define as offspring is what we do. It's like our actions, what we do every day. These are our children, our sons, daughters. So they have like some kind of living connotations. They're like living things, what we do. So it's like anything we do, so to speak, has consequences. So it's like if we do a good action, for instance, this good action would manifest in different ways. So I do some good to some person, a person in particular, this person is going to do something also with what I have done to him or her. So that dynamic, so to speak, of good action or a particular action, good or bad or whatever, as a consequence. This is also like a child, like a son, like a daughter. It's like a different dimension to see what we create with what we do. So it's like doing something implies not just doing, but also a creative process. So telling something to someone, doing something to somebody implies something. So it's like a common sense thing. We have to pay attention to that though. Because these are our offspring, our children, what comes from us. Not just blood and flesh. So we have to be the whole idea about this is to pay attention to what we do. Those are our children, our offspring. So then basically the narration starts talking about who Noah was. In other words, this offspring comes from somebody. This is Noah. So who's this guy? He was a righteous man in his generations. So it's like plural. It's like in his actions he was righteous. And also his time. So sages, or Jewish sages, talk about what that means, like righteous in his generations. And then we keep reading the narration and say that that generation was corrupted before the eyes of God. So the obvious conclusion would say this guy was righteous compared to the rest of his people. Of his kind of those times. So he was like a, let's say, better person than the other people. So tomorrow say, well, he was not necessarily like an ideal good man, but compared to other people, he was righteous. So then we have no idea what that was. What is the reference of being righteous among wicked? But in general, they say he was a good guy, basically. Noah walked with God. So the fact that he was walking with God, of course, makes him good. It's good enough to be good by being with God. It's like reaffirming that the guy was righteous. He was a righteous in his generations. Noah walked with God. The lesson here, we're trying to apply everything that we read here. How we read this in our consciousness. We have a Noah, we have an Adam, we have a Cain, we have an Abel, we have Eve. Every character in the Torah, every place, every item, everything in the Torah represents something in our consciousness and is within us, by the way. Our sages in the Talmud say that the Torah is the blueprint of creation, God's creation, what we see around, the universe, everything. So we are an extension of that. Therefore, that plan is imprinted in our consciousness also. The point is to be aware of that plan, of that blueprint. So it's who's Adam in our consciousness? Who's Eve? Who's the snake? What is the garden of Eden? Who is Abel? Who is Cain? Who is Noah? And then we start reading who these characters were. We should say are, in the way we are. So this is like this is an Adam in terms of an ideal person in our consciousness with a particular purpose. Plan and care for the garden. What is the garden's life, basically? We have to care for life. So then this higher purpose embodied by Adam had some kind of interaction with Eve. It's like the female counterpart, the female aspect of consciousness. And then this female aspect of consciousness dealt with snake, a serpent. What the serpent represents. The serpent usually represents ego. That's why the Pharaoh in Egypt, he has some kind of hat or whatever to cover the head. Snake and a vulture. Usually represents qualities in our consciousness. So we see what a vulture does, and to pay attention to that if we have that in our consciousness. And what a snake does, the same. So we're not talking about now at Noah, we're talking about the Garden of Eden. The idea is to define certain things here, certain concepts, certain values. So we start understanding how our consciousness works. So the snake is the ego, basically. The ego says it's not enough what I have. It's never enough for ego. Never. Even if we get the universe, is there any other universes that I can get to? It's never enough. So that's basically the dialogue between Eve and the snake was that. He said, you lack something. And she said, we have everything here. He said, no, you don't. You have to be like God. She's like, wow, you're right. I mean, if God has more, it's God. Why not having that? So then, she was seduced by ego. Yeah, I'm going to become God if I bite from this fruit, if I acquire this knowledge. But it was basically a lie. Eve was deceived, cheated by the snake. So, you want to pay attention. What is the snake in our consciousness? I mean, our ego. What is the one's desire for more of what we have already? Either we need it, either if we want it, or we desire it. So what are the references here? I mean, what is that I really need, want, or desire? I give some kind of priorities here. We usually don't set priorities. We just jump from need to desire. And actually, we make them the same. We make them the same. I lost for this. I need this. I want this. It's the same thing. It isn't. If we go to analyze our basic needs, food, shelter, knowledge, in order to function positively and harmonically with our environment, that's good enough. So it's like wanting beyond that, then we have a problem. We have said in our blog, God's Love, that the realm, so to speak, the domains of ego is the realm of imagination. So when we start imagining, usually ego leads. So we start imagining that we are gods, kings, whatever, heroes. So we have to be careful about what we do with our imagination. What do we imagine about? What is the purpose of it? What do we dream about? What do we fantasize about? Is it egos, fantasies, and illusions, or loves, ways, and attributes. It's like what motivates me to be generous, to be open, to be sharing, not to lust, not to envy, not to covet. Just basically giving who I am, the goodness that I am and that I'm looking for around, looking forward to share. That's the realm of reality. The other one is like what I want to have, what I want to possess, whatever. The motivation is different. We have to make that distinction. Anyway, coming back to Noach. He walked with God. He was a good guy. So Noah in this case represents our higher consciousness. It represents the second Adam, so to speak. It's not the same, but like a different version. Going to a different stage of consciousness, by the way. We're talking about an Adam in the realm of perfection. Perfection is talking about plenitude, wholeness, totality, the Garden of Eden. And then we're talking about now about Noah in a whole different stage. There's no Garden of Eden anymore. It's an empty space flooded with water. How do I deal with this? And this is the story of Noah, basically. So after that it says, we have to pay attention to this, it's very important. Noah had begotten 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. What these 3 men represent in our consciousness. So we have Shem, which later we will see that he was blessed by Noah, the first one. Represents the higher level of consciousness. This commentary complements what we have said in our commentaries on Parashat Noach in our blog, God's love. Okay? So if you read that, you will have more precise, so to speak, definitions of what we're talking about here. So we don't want to repeat what we already wrote in the blog. But anyway, they represent 3 levels of consciousness. Shem, the higher level of consciousness, because that is connected with God, basically. It's like a permanent connection. What later in Judaism becomes the priesthood. That's what Shem represents. High priest. Then we have Ham. This is the order in which it's written here. It's exactly the opposite of Shem. It's the lower aspect of consciousness. Lower emotions, lower passions, lower basic instincts, lower feelings, lower thoughts. That's Ham. And then Japheth actually is in the middle. Japheth represents the individual creative process in which we unfold ourselves in our environment. It's like some kind of the conscious self. It's like what I'm going to do with who I am. What I'm going to create based on who I am. So the act of creating something out of what I have around me, pretty much what Japheth means. Literally, the name Japheth in Hebrew means beauty. Or when we say that something is beautiful, we say Yafeh. It's beautiful, feminine, Yafa. So Japheth has to do with beauty. So we see that the creative process that we are endowed with, God gave us to us. This creative power is directed to something beautiful. It's like what we think and what we do, the purpose, the object would be beauty. Now we have to understand beauty in the context of goodness, not just an aesthetic definition. Like this concept of Hollywood movies portrayal of beauty versus, let's say, Eskimos' sense of beauty, something probably different. or a Zulu South African tribe concept of beauty would be completely different. So we're not talking about this beauty here. We're talking about the beauty that is the result of goodness. It's very, very, very important to remark. In other words, the lessons here of the Torah is about moral and ethical approach to reality, from beginning to end. So we should not have let this purpose, focus, missed in the way we approach life. It's very important. Okay. Now the earth had become corrupt before God, and the earth had become filled with robbery. And God saw the earth, and behold, it was corrupted, for all flesh had corrupted its way upon the earth. In 2 verses, we're talking about verse 12 and 11, chapter 6 in this portion of the Torah. We're talking about 3 times about corruption. It's like could have been said once, twice. It was said 3 times in 2 verses. And then it was repeated all over again later. And we have to define what corruption means. And it's before the eyes of God also. So our sages, based on oral tradition, what we call in Judaism, midrash, oral tradition. In other words, what we have been hearing from generation to generation from the beginning of time, the beginning of the Torah. That's the midrash. They say that these people were corrupted in a way in which our conception of corruption is probably very small. It's like these people used to live 1,000 years, average. Or average, no, that was the idea, the purpose, to live 1,000 years. So obviously they have a different physiology. They look different than what we look now. We are designed now to live, I don't know, if you're very healthy, 70, 80 years old, that's it. Years of life. So at that time, 1,000 years, that's a lot of time. I mean, compared to living 70, it's less than 10% actually, where we live now. So, if these people were living this length of time, and they were corrupted in the eyes of God, so you can imagine what these people were doing. I mean, our imagination is poor, lack this kind of projection to imagine what kind of things these people were doing, that here the Torah called robbery. Hamas sounds like the terrorist neighbors that we have here around our country. Robbery, they're stealing something. They were thieves. Thieves of what? These people, based on oral tradition, they had everything, they didn't starve. The earth was filled of fruits and nutrition everywhere. So people that had really to work in order to survive. So what these people engaged in, that they were corrupted. The flesh was corrupted. In other words, God said, this kind of human being, if it's corrupted, if it's decaying in their flesh, it's dead. Everything that is corrupted, that we see actually in medicine, when somebody has an infection or gangrene or anything like this, dead is close. Something that is unstoppable. It's like we cannot cure this thing. This person is gonna die very soon. A terminal illness kind of thing. It's like the body got corrupted. It is. That's what it means. So it's like the purpose of life is useless. It doesn't have any meaning. It doesn't have any purpose. So we must translate corrupted before God as dead before God. Now, our old tradition said that the major sin that these people had actually is here in the scripture. I want to kind of summarize it as idolatry. The first signal of idolatry was in this generation. So the descendants of Cain were corrupted. Cain and Seth, actually. So, what God is gonna do, considering the circumstances. Now, idolatry is, the definition of idolatry in the context of Judaism, the denial of God. So usually the people who are agnostic, they are idolaters. The idols are different. I mean, different than God. I mean, of course, we cannot compare God to an idol in Judaism, but the idea is that if I despise God, I have to love something in contrast to it. In other words, if I don't believe in God, I have to believe in something else. Now, those kind of beliefs in Judaism are called idolatry. Anything. So, the whole idea here in this comment, in this conversation, in this dialogue with you is what are my idols that I follow instead of God? I mean, the God as defined, he has no definition, as described in the Torah. And we have to make a little inventory. What are my addictions? What are my obsessions? What are my habits? What are my attachments? What kind of behavior or pattern do I follow? Then we will find out what our idols are. It's very simple. What we prefer to bend to, bow to, that is not God's ways and attributes. See, what are those either real or imagined fantasies and illusions that we follow as real? That's the big lesson in what idolatry means. So these people, during a lifespan of 1,000 years, they basically ignored God. So the oral tradition, the mystic oral tradition tells that these people had, the consciousness was like a super consciousness compared to us. They were different human beings, completely different, as we said before. So these people had the ability to, what we call psychic clairvoyancy. They have all this. So they have powers. They could move things by will, those kind of things. So this is how we understand this. So why would they steal if they didn't need anything to survive and to live? Why were they stealing? They said they were stealing from each other. So stealing what? This power that we're talking about. So translating this in our pop culture, it's like there were a bunch of vampires in that generation. And people were sucking each other's lives. It's like what we call kidnapping now. You kidnap someone. We deprive them from the freedom. We subjugate them to what we want them to do for us. This is how we kidnap people. So we detain them against their will. something like that was happening back then in that generation. But it was not just kidnapping, it was really, really stealing other people's lives. Well, that's pretty bad in the eyes of God. Really, I mean, it's like, this is not regular stealing a bank or stealing a car or burglarizing a house or anything like that. I'm talking about robbing other people's source of life, other people's identity. I mean, identity, they're talking about talent, they're talking about the creative potential. We steal the creating potential of a person. How can we do that now? We can't. We're different human beings. But back then, they used to do that, according to the mystic oral tradition in Judaism. That was stealing. So you say the version of stealing in our time would be kidnapping, retaining people, slaving people, the kind of, which happens today. We know that. So, filled with robbery, they were corrupted. For all flesh had corrupted. In other words, life was corrupted. It's like a rotten fruit. You have to throw it away. You cannot eat that. It's corrupted. Rotten. So, in the eyes of God, he said, this is not the kind of people that I want to populate the world. You see, we say that the Torah is the blueprint of creation. It's a plan. The divine plan is the Torah, which is populate the world, be like God, living His ways, manifesting, doing, being His attributes, which is goodness. That's the purpose of creation. That's the Gan Eden that was supposed to be afterwards. It wasn't that way. Why? We had free will. God gave us free will. Again, as we said before, evil is a reference, not a choice. But then we made evil a choice. So we became, basically, that time, evil. It's like, that's not the plan, sorry. We have to reboot the computer. We have to reinitiate the whole thing. So that's the context of the flood. So the flood is not destruction in terms of, I'm going to punish them. It's like, guys, this is not the purpose of creation. You're making the wrong choices. You ignore me completely. You don't even know who you are, where you came from. You don't care about your origin. You don't want to establish a connection between your creators. The whole purpose of the Torah, the whole purpose of life in Judaism is to know God, to know where we came from. He made us. He's our creator. This is common sense to know. So I want to know my father. I want to know my mother. It's an urge. It's something that is compelling. You know that a lot of people, there are many cases that we have known in the press, in television, whatever, movies, people who are adopted. And then when they grow up, they want to know the biological parents. And they pay whatever they can pay. They give whatever they can give in order to find out about it. It's just to know. Even that second, that minute, when they know the person is like, okay, that's it. It's like an urge. It's imprinted in our consciousness. Now, for those who don't have that, they're not aware of that. It's not that they don't have it, they're not aware of that. They ignore that completely. It's fine. But we're talking about it in the general. The average person wants to know their origin. I want to bond also with whom they came from. It's like they miss that bonding. Same things with God. Exactly the same. It's like, God, I'm here and you're there. I need to know you. I want to be with you. I want to bond with you. You're my Father. You're my Creator. I'm missing that. It's like, God is, I'm here, I'm waiting for you to know me. You have curiosity. Have you seen the stars? Have you seen a sunset, a sunrise, a rainbow? It's mentioned here. This is what's behind this. Who did this? I want to know. So, this thing was completely blanked, completely erased in this generation's consciousness. Like, God doesn't exist, we are gods. We do whatever we please, and we destroy whatever as we please. So I would say it doesn't work that way. Water. So he spoke to Noah and said, I'm gonna do a covenant with you. So it goes, let's go in the narration. God said to Noah, the end of all flesh has come before me. So it's like this kind of life, this kind of flesh, this kind of life has to have an end. Can't be like this. For the earth is filled with robbery through them. And behold, I'm about to destroy them from the earth. Make yourself an ark, and then the description of that comes. So he said again, make yourself an ark, because behold, I'm about to bring the flood waters upon the earth to destroy all flesh, in which there is a breath of life from under the heavens. So it's like, with the air that we breathe comes from God. Sometimes we take air for granted. It's amazing. We just can't live with it, without it, I'm sorry. Just can't. That's the Spirit of God. Air. Isn't this because in Hebrew we have the same connotation? Spirit and air and wind have share the same semantic definition. So it's like, as we breathe, we are breathing the Spirit of God will keep us alive. Actually, we don't know what that is. It's O2, 2 molecules of oxygen or whatever, those who are like chemistry. What that is, it's pretty abstract. It's very abstract. I mean, we don't know what that is. It's like matter. Either organic or inorganic. We really don't know where it came from. What is the purpose actually? We try, physicists, chemists, scientists, throughout history, to find out what is the meaning of this. And they have scientific answers. But the idea is like every time that we take a deep breath, we know that we are breathing God. As simple as that. So just be mindful about that. So it's like, we take it really for granted. It's unbelievable. We don't have to think about that. It's like, the moment I stop breathing, I'm dead. It's like I'm losing my connection with God. I mean, in terms of the connection, in terms of keeping myself, this physical body alive, the connection still remains with the soul, with the consciousness, whatever remains after we die. So, a breath of life from under the heavens, everything that is in the earth shall expire. It's like I'm gonna cut the air, basically. Then, but I will establish my covenant with you, and you shall enter the ark. You, your sons, your wife, your sons' wives with you. So he said, I'm gonna make a covenant with you. In other words, the rules of the game, so to speak, are going to be different. Actually, they're going to change. We're going to go back again to the original blueprint of the Torah, and you and I, Noach and God, are going to make a covenant. It's like, it's going to be as good as planned. That's the idea. That's the covenant. Be as good as planned. The covenant, the bridge between Israel and God, exactly have the same meaning. This is a covenant with you as a people. You're going to be my people. I'm going to be your God for this plan. We have a purpose here. It's not a contract for a contract. We have business to do. We have things to do. Okay, same thing here. So, Noah did according to everything God commanded him, so he did. Okay, now, God, basically, Noah had a dialogue with God and he's saying, why are you going to destroy humankind? I think that's too kind of harsh. And he said, well, you don't want me, this said the Midrash, and actually based on the Torah, what it narrates, he said, tell the people, to return to me. What people call repentance. Return to me. And I won't destroy. But Noah didn't do that. He tried, but people were not listening. So he said, these people. And Noah, according to our oral tradition, he expected at the last minute that God was going to change his mind. Like, he's not going to do this. I'm gonna build the ark. I'm going to do everything that he's asking to, but I don't think that it's going to happen. He probably will change his mind. It wasn't that way. So after the flood, when Noah saw all the destruction the Midrash tells, Noah was some kind of someone got, so to speak, coming here and said, what have you done? Why did you do this? And God answered him. He said, I asked you to tell the people to return to me. You didn't do anything. You didn't do anything. You were selfish. And now you're blaming me that I destroyed the humankind. So what are you talking about? This is the result of something that you had done, you didn't do. You should have told your generation, you just change. This is God. You have to stop believing that you have your own idols. Stop doing that. Let's go back to God. Let's know Him. But He didn't. That's exactly what we're doing now in these times, in our times. So we want the redemption. We have to translate these concepts here. It's not about God. It's about God's plan. It's about goodness. So how we translate what happened then and what's happening now in our times, we have to change the way it is. It's not about just come back here and believe in this guy who's going to save you and and you're going to be saved. No, it doesn't work that way. In Judaism, it doesn't work that way. Just forget about that somebody's going to redeem you or an idea of somebody. You have to do yourself, you have to do your work. So you have to be in this way more oriental. Trying to what the Orientals were doing about redeeming themselves. It's an individual process. But an individual process that has repercussions, that has consequences, that has effects around us. So we not just sit and go to a cave and meditate and close our eyes and leave their eyes to here so we can feel the third eye, kind of thing, and then forget about everything. In Judaism, that doesn't work. That's not the point. The point is yes, we need to do a process. Yeah, we need to close our eyes. We need to reflect. But we need to act. You say, well, I'm in my own meditation, in my own world, meditating 24 hours a day, 24 hours a day, whatever, like Buddha, and I'm enlightened and that's it. And the rest of the human gang, I don't give a damn about them. And one of the issues that we have here, talking about your friend, myself, with the New Age movement. We're talking about the secret, and talking about this, how to make riches, how to have success in life at the expense of everything and everybody. It's like I'm gonna program myself to have this and that, to satisfy your ego. You want to have a $5 million house? Go for it. It's so funny and so stupid and idiotic. It is. And I just look around, all these people, because they're idiots, they're imbeciles, that's why they live in their misery and in the slum and the projects, whatever they call it, where they live. They have to strive for more, have this and have that. I say, yeah, sure. We have to go beyond these things. We have to go beyond egos, fantasies, and illusions. We just can't do that. And this is not an invitation to live in misery or to live poor. No. Of course not. But the idea is that whatever we be, whatever we have, we do it for the sake of goodness, for ourselves and for others. I remember that I have friends who had big boats, a yacht and that kind of thing in Chicago when I was living there. I remember these people called all these friends, their friends. Like, oh, it doesn't make sense that I have this yacht if I don't share it with anybody. It's like, yeah, you're right. It's like, I bring other people so we enjoy the lake, and the wind and the summer, and that kind of thing. Everybody's happy in the boat, in the yacht. That's the whole point. Of course, there's people that are only them, they go alone in the yacht, sailing and and they're extremely fulfilled what they want and everything. It's fine too. But there's a difference. Because the guy who is going alone, probably with a crew serving him, and the other guy is like, I have this big boat. He said, I want to share it with people. I want to be my happiness, what I want to feel as good. I want to share it with other people. I want people to feel it too. Like, that's the right attitude. So we're not talking about get rid of the boat and get rid of the yacht. No, of course not. Make it bigger, make it better. But share it. Make other people part of what you are, what you have, what you do. That's the whole point. It's funny because it starts with the family. We have family, we have a wife and children. That's exactly what we do. We want to provide for them. Because I know that providing for them is our happiness. We're supposed to do that. We have to project that approach to life, which is imprinted actually in our genetic frame. Have to do it all over the place. That's the whole idea. The cell of the family is supposed to be the microcosm of society. We have to care for each other and love each other. That's the whole idea. But we don't do that. We do it in our immediate environment. After we get out of that door, it's a different thing. Okay, so let's continue here. So then the flood came. In other words, what I'm trying to understand is that God has a plan. We don't have to talking about a punishment. We're gonna do this. I'm gonna go to hell and I'm gonna burn myself in hell and that kind of thing. No, it doesn't work that way. God damn it, let's think about God for once. Sometimes it's like, okay, it's good. It's like goodness wants this destruction and that kind of thing. No. You have to connect to that plan. Then we live. And we expand our life. The idea is to expand life, to develop all our creative potentials, their fullest. That's what we're here. That's what the Torah tells us to be, to have, and to do. Okay, so let's understand the flood. Not like God's punishment. He was angry. No, it wasn't that way. The flesh was corrupted. The purpose was lost. We have to reinitiate the program. That's what happened. This kind of example, this kind of like Sodom and Gomorrah, same thing. These people were extremely, extremely corrupted. They were evil, pure evil. They cannot be there teaching other people to be like them. Expanding the wickedness and the destruction of the human spirit, of the goodness of life, had to be destroyed. Fire, transformation. So water and fire, we have to understand them as elements of transformation, cleansing. It's not necessarily about destruction. It's about change. We have to invite the water, we immerse the water to clean ourselves. That's why we elevate burning offerings to be burned to God. Transform everything, all the goodness that we have, or anything that we want to transform, every aspect of consciousness, we offer to God. We elevate them. How? Through a fire. What is this fire? God's fire. What is God's fire? God's love. And we initiate, we connect, we make that connection with our love and His love. Then we bond with Him. That's the pleasing aroma that they're talking about when they made a sacrifice to God. It's pleasing to Him. So we're not burning an animal. Yes, we are symbolically. But that animal is our consciousness, also our life, our flesh, our bodies, to elevate to Him. Not to be burned in them. No. So this is the context of the flood. That's the way we have to understand. Now, after that, there are things that we don't want to extend too long. Comes the episode of when Noah got drunk. Okay, that's an issue that is very delicate. Because he said something like, Noah debased himself. It's like at some point he wanted to experience the materialistic fantasies and illusion of ego, the material life. He said, okay, I just want to get drunk. I want to experience the material delights of God, so to speak. Which is also not so to speak, that's the way they are real. We create them actually. And we give them the value of real. We value them as real. Then he got drunk. Ham, the lowest aspects of consciousness, and we said Ham, one of his sons, Noah's sons, saw him that he was drunk. And he said, like, what happened here? That's one of the problems that we understand the lower aspects of consciousness, our instincts, our emotions, like kind of with the base emotion, the base instincts. They expect better from our judgment, really. From our approach to reality, from our higher consciousness, from the ideal that we are, that Noach, that father. And it's like when our lower nature sees that we are not as high in our consciousness as we should, we debase ourselves. We come down to them. Then these emotions are going to mock us, going to make fun of us. They're going to point out to us, say, you're drunk, you're naked in your drunkenness. You became naked. So it's like judgment comes. So like every time that we do something wrong, it's this judgment. We judge ourselves. That's our punishment, by the way. It's like we punish ourselves with what we think, or we decide what we did wrong. I mean, not wrong, what we didn't do right. Yes. For goodness. It's like that's why, after this episode of the nakedness and the drunkenness of Noah cursed Ham. So you're gonna serve Shem. You're gonna serve Yafet. You're gonna be the servant. You're gonna be their slave. And then this is how we understand the lower aspects of consciousness. They're supposed to be subservient to higher consciousness. So we have a passion, we have an emotion, if we have an instinct, we have to direct them into goodness, into a positive purpose. And we do that through love. So instead of lusting a person, we love the person. And we channeled our lust through love. Then the intercourse, the connection, is pure, is good, is whole, is complete. It's good. And then we can harvest from that goodness. That's the idea. So you just have to be subservient to Shem, to higher consciousness, our connection with God. That's what it means. This means. So we have 3 levels of consciousness, we said. We have to subservient. All our consciousness has to be subservient to God's will, what He wants from us, in order to fulfill His plan. So in order to be partners with God, we have to do His will. What is His will? Emulating His ways and attributes. He relates to us in a positive way. We have seen this throughout the Torah. It's good. It's good to us. He loves us. And we have to respond being exactly like Him. Being loving, being caring, being good. So that's the whole point here. So, then the portion ends, actually at the end, with the episode of the Tower of Babel Tower. It's very important. Here, the verses say, like, God was saying that these people have one language, and I want to reach out to me. In other words, one language represents one line of thought. When we study linguistics, they define thought and language in a particular way. In other words, the way we think have to be articulated, have to be expressed through language. So, thought, of course, is first, the language. But in order to articulate, it needs to express itself in a language. So when we have one language, we actually are having one thought, one line of thought. Everybody was thinking in the same way. That's what's the meaning of this. It's a linguistic definition, interpretation of this. So everybody was the same line of thought, the same kind of thinking. So our sages say that this is the beginning, this is the first time that the fascist mentality came up. So there was this king Nimrod, was the king of Babel, and it was like unified all humankind at that time, the descendants of Noach, to think and act in one way. So God was looking at that and He said, this is not the plan. I love diversity, says God. We are diverse. What's the meaning of having a humankind thinking in the same way, doing the same way, speaking the same language? No. So people think otherwise. They say, no, people have to think the same way. That's the fascist mentality. Be with me. Be the way I want you to be. And if you're not part of that plan, I kill you. So in that time, there was no massacre because people had one language. There was one line of thinking, but there was no direction. The Nimrod, the first Führer in history, Duce, said, we have to think in this way. We have to be this way. We're going to build a tower, meaning we're gods. We have the ability to reach out to heaven. We have the ability to be gods. We have the ability to do it by ourselves. So we can make bricks like stones. It's like we're really going to stone ourselves. We're going to make ourselves bricks. We're going to consolidate ourselves in a tower, symbolizing the unified consciousness for the purpose of being basically the same everywhere. No purpose. Just being and thinking in the same way. So there was some kind of a very peculiar form of idolatry. Because they were really, divinizing themselves. So we're gods. We are. That's what they said. So we're going to build a tower to actually dethrone God, and we're going to be gods. It's pretty ambitious, by the way. So God said, that's not my plan. You guys are delusional. I want diversity. Then he changed the languages. See, like from a practical view, it's like then Spanish, French, Portuguese, Sanskrit, Hindi, Russian appeared, all the languages. So we cannot take it that literally. We know that. It's like our line of thinking thought. We were speaking the same language, but we didn't understand each other. Why? Because the way we think was changed. Individually. So really we didn't, we want diversity. I want you guys as God to think differently. And then coexist with our differences, with your differences, harmonically. As part of the expansion of consciousness, diversity. These people say, we want to think the same way, fascists, basically. We don't want gypsies, we don't want blacks, we don't want Jews, we don't want this. We want people to think the same way, look the same way. Boring. So another failure in human consciousness to reach out to God. And we're reaching out to themselves, making themselves a superior race of themselves, to adore themselves. Wrong. So then, after that, this portion, Noach, ends with the generations that preceded Abraham and Sarah. So in other words, this hope. After all, God says, I'm hoping that at least 2 people would reach out to me. That's what God says. I don't expect anything from everybody. I gave them free will. People do whatever they want. That's what God created us with, free will. Actually, evil is a reference, not a choice. Choose goodness. So these 2 guys, this couple, Abraham and Sarah, naturally, by their own free will, they're gonna choose God. They're gonna choose goodness. And then that's the beginning of Israel. That's the beginning of the breath of the covenant between Israel and God. God and Israel. So it's like summarizing. We have to learn first about egos, fantasies, and illusions. About relationships, meaning I don't have to take anything from other people. Not just the possession, the creative potential. We should not do that. We should not, must not kidnap their consciousness as we are. Actually, we see around television, mass culture, consumer society. These people are basically kidnappers of human consciousness. We are kidnapped. We have to do what they want us to do. We switch to papers, television, media. They tell us what to do. We're kidnapped. Voluntarily. We're making the choice. Yeah, I want to be colonized. I want to be enslaved. I want to be I want to have addictions. I'm going to have habits. I'm going to have this. I'm going to have that. We forget about God. We believe more in a computer than in God. It's like our idolatry is being in front of that laptop, or a PC, or a Mac, whatever. But there, you're empty. Of course, we can see something positive. Actually, a lot of us learn in the internet, of course. But you know what I'm talking about? I'm talking about bending to consumer society, to their values, and sell our consciousness to them. And work 65, 67 years of our lives in order to get a pension and living a lifestyle designed as they want us to, based on our culture. So you have a Western culture, you do it in a particular way, you have Oriental, you do it in a particular way, but basically it's the same, pretty much. Okay, so we finished this now. Of course, there are missing things. I mean, I'm talking about, we can talk about many other things or things in depth, more profoundly. But I think that you get the idea of the commentary that we want to share with you. So you have questions, you can check the blog and write us, and we will answer in case that you have any doubts or anything like that, okay? So have a blessed rest of the week. Shabbat Shalom, and see you next time.